Yes.
Okay. John is here. Kent is here. John, I know you're leaving at 3, but we might be done by then. We'll see. Dr. Bell is taking a well-deserved vacation day.
Fantastic.
Maria's here. Marie's here. Anthony's here.
And Dwayne's right over there.
And Julio's here, too. Excuse me. Oh, Julio's here for Gary.
Correct.
Gotcha. Thank you, Julio.
Dwayne's coming in.
Dwayne's coming in.
On his way?
Okay. Right. Okay. So, there's Dave. Okay. All right. Okay, so let me call the meeting to order. Welcome Keith back, our faculty co-chair. Keith was away on some vacation, and he's back, and I'm going to be meeting with him sometime probably next week, and we'll get Professor Oberlander caught up to where we are right now. So I have the approval of the Thursday, July 12th minutes. Do I hear a motion? Dave moves. Second? Did anybody who was here?
Oh, nobody was.
Nobody's here? Oh, second. Kevin was here. Okay. All right. I feel a lot of abstentions coming on, but we'll find out here. Okay. Any discussion? I'll call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Noes? All those opposed signify by saying no. Abstentions?
Abstain.
I see 3 abstentions. Okay. Okay. Public comment. Is there any person of our 3-member audience who would like to make a public comment? Dan, no? Okay. Budget update. All right. As everybody recalls, last week our primary discussion point was the $10.5 million budget reduction for 2012-13. Dr. Rocha was with us. He presented the reduction. BRAC took action by voting individually on each of the 6 items. We supported recommendation number 2, which was the workload reduction. We supported recommendation number 3, which was basically borrowing $1 million from our other post-employment benefit fund as a 1-year deferral of payment. We voted in favor of the tax and revenue anticipation note. In other words, to recommend that the Board of Trustees apply for that note. And we requested that instead of repaying the dental fund loan, that we deferred, I shouldn't call it a loan, instead of not funding the dental fund in 2011 and 12, we decided to use that money to help balance the 2011-12 budget. This year, because that budget is now down to about $1.4 million, or I should say that fund is now down to about $1.4 million, the assumption was that we would repay, or we would fund that dental fund again in 12-13 at a cost of approximately $1.3 million. This group discussed that and basically asked if the repayment of last year's dental fund loan can be further delayed, all or in part. And the all or in part would be $1.3 million or some number less than that. So that information went forward to Dr. Rocha. And then the group indicated that it did not support the reduction in force for unclassified hourly staff nor furloughs for non-faculty, which was item 1 and 4 on the budget recommendation sheet. At last night's board meeting, the Board of Trustees had a similar briefing by Dr. Rocha that he gave to BRAC last week. Even prior to the briefing by Dr. Rocha, because of the other items that were on the agenda, the $10.5 million topic was discussed at great length in one aspect or another. And the board, although the item was not on the agenda for action last night, the item was on the agenda for discussion last night. So the direction that the administration left with was the notion that we need to begin to take action on the items that we need to take action on. For example, the district will be notifying the unions that are impacted by this, the non-faculty unions, of a request to sit down and negotiate the furloughs. And there'll be some notice of that in the near future. The executive committee members and Dr. Rocha will be meeting on Monday regarding the reduction in force of hourly and temporary unclassified workers and how we would begin to implement that, perhaps as soon as July 30th, a week from this coming Monday. The sense that the administration received from the board is that although the board did not want to take any of these actions, the board understood the necessity of reducing the budget, and therefore it is presumed that they will take action implementing all, some, portions thereof of the items that are on this list. So since the next board meeting is not until August 15th, we feel it's prudent to begin to take action. Now, there was some discussion regarding the TRAN, the Tax and Revenue Anticipation Note. And I'm going to share with you in a few minutes the presentation that I gave last night, along with Renee Graves, our accounting assistants from VLS. But during that presentation, which preceded a lot of the discussion about the reduction, we had to basically report that the TRAN is not really a budget balancing tool. In effect, we are recommending with this budget development scenario a budget that is $2 million out of balance. It's a deficit funded budget, if you will. Because the TRAN is not cash in hands. You have to have expenditures equal to your revenue. Whatever your revenue is, your expenditures have got to cut. Our expenditures are $2 million above the stated revenue.
Our actual expenditures?
No, this is a budget. This is a budget.
All right.
Okay, so this is the accrual budget that we're presenting. Okay, which is how this is what budgets are. Budgets are projections. So the board had a difficult time accepting the deficit budget. In the years that people could remember, they never passed a budget that was out of balance, that was a deficit budget. However, at least reading the tea leaves last night, it seemed like they could go there if they had to, because of the notion of the deferred income that is owed us, and the amount of that deferred income, and what that deferred income would be in 13-14, as well as the amount owed to us in 11-12. I'm sorry. 11. What's owed us 11-12, and as well as what it will be in 12-13. Danny.
So, if you want to keep going, I just wanted to ask a question as far as that deferred. How much? So, are we paid through 10-11? Are we paid up from the state?
No. As a matter of fact, why don't I do this? Why don't I table
10-11.
Sorry, I don't want to interrupt you. You can keep going with your presentation.
No,
We'll come
because
back
I
to
think
this.
actually you're right. Let's quickly go through what I've got here, and that'll help this discussion.
He did say 10-11.
Yeah, I said 10-11, so are we
Not
paid up?
11-12.
Yeah, right.
We are.
We are now paid in full for 10-11.
Now, is that payment on Monday, and does that include then the payment that's supposed to come next Monday of $9.5 million?
No, that's 11-12. Let me go through this real quick, and you'll see it. Okay, so the first thing that we did last night is we presented the 2011-12 fund balance as of June 30th, 2012. It's tentative, dated 12/16 because we're still, obviously we're still closing the books for June. So you'll recognize on the left-hand side, as we've looked at before, the different fund categories we have. You will recall that the 01 General Fund Unrestricted is our primary operating budget. And you'll see, for example, the GASB 64, the self-insurance, our OPEB fund. And you'll see Fund 41, the capital outlay. And I'll come back to the capital outlay in a second. And you can see that what our beginning fund balances were, what the revenue expenditures were, what the ending fund balance is as of that period, the encumbrances against that, and the all-important cash in the county or cash in the bank column. On the capital outlay fund, we did something a little different because we wanted to convey to the board the understanding that the capital outlay fund, unless the board chooses to change this direction, is more or less spoken for by virtue of the banner and other technology conversion and upgrade projects, network project, call center project, smart 18 project, the lab upgrades, all that kind of stuff. The facilities renovations and replace equipment of the furniture, there's a line item in there for that sort of an ongoing thing. We are not moving forward with the fuel cell project at the present time. So Dwayne and others in the facilities area can speak to the upgrade, the power upgrade, which is something that's necessary at this point, as well as the heating, ventilation, and air conditioning upgrades. Sorry, yes, Dave. Okay.
I was actually curious, what happened with the fuel cell?
Basically, it's a project that is a little too involved at this present time for us to be engaged in. And also, frankly, there could be some issues relative to what we're dealing with the Dr. Van Pelt situation.
Thank you.
Don't know if that for a fact, but all different factors, put it aside for now. Dave.
Yeah, I just wanted to make something clear. The HVAC and power upgrade was not part of the fuel cell. That was our building. That's the power structure for the MCC boards. And then all the air handler units are, when the building was built and they're falling apart.
Got it.
So that's what that was for. It had nothing to do with the fuel cell.
Okay, thank you.
I just want to make sure that, you don't take that out thinking that that's part of the fuel cell.
Got it. Thanks for the clarification.
The reason why it wasn't done yet is because of the asbestos problem.
Got it. Thank you for clearing that up. And then the $967,000, which is basically $1 million that's budgeted on more or less an annual basis to deal with a variety of things of just trying to maintain the facility as best we can. And if you walk around the campus, as beautiful as our campus is, there's a great deal of deferred maintenance. So it's kind of an ongoing challenge. Okay, and then you'll see the fund balances, and I don't need to belabor this, but let's go down to the bottom where we talk about the fiscal year 11-12 and where we are. And then I'm going to turn the page and show you something else here. At the time that this was prepared, we had a receivable of $24,493,602 from the state. We had an ending fund balance of $19,859. So there's some $5 or $6 million that has yet to be determined as to when that's coming in and from what sources it's coming in. Right, Marie?
24 million. We already got 9,500,000 on July 12th.
Right.
We're going to get another 9.5 on July 19.
But what explains the difference between the funding balance is 19,859, includes a receivable of 24,493. Is it the encumbrances against it? Is that the difference?
There are some liabilities that we haven't paid yet.
Exactly. So that's what I wanted to clarify. It's the encumbrances tied to that. Okay? So that the balance is 19,800, even though they owe us 24, and again, this is accrual. This is owed us, but we have encumbrances against the 01 general fund. Then to answer your question, Danny, what was deferred for 10-11, i.e. almost $19 million, included a receivable from the state totaling $19,253, and that has now been paid in full to us. Do you remember when the last payment came in on that? On the 10-11?
If I'm not mistaken, it's sometimes in June 10, 2011.
Okay. So the reason why we have that there is we really wanted to put the point out that the deferral in 10-11 was $19 million. It went up to $24.5 million. It's projected to go up some significantly larger amount in 12-13 as a result of the further deferrals on the calendars that we keep talking about. Deferring about 40% of what we normally get in the first 5 months of the year is now going to be given to us in the last quarter, May or June. So that 24 deferral is going to go up significantly higher next year.
So the 9.5 million that we received on Monday.
So turn the page.
Okay. All right, you're getting there. All right.
Okay. So this is a daily cash balance. The red indicates without interfund borrowing. The black indicates with the interfund borrowing. Let's just go to the bottom of the page and we'll answer Danny's question. On 7/12/12, we received $9.5 million. We received notice of $9.5 million, and we actually got it in the county on July 16th. We are feeling very confident that today, I don't know, Marie, did we get the notice of that the money arrived today? Not yet.
It'll be Monday.
Monday. So there you go. So the point is that we're told the money's coming in today, but it will be realized on Monday. So we don't get a notice from the state that they actually sent it to the county, Marie? We don't know that? Okay.
Is that notification to all the district?
Excuse me?
Just a general notification to all the district,
Got it.
the date, but we actually look at when the money really hits in
Okay.
the county.
Okay, so
But but those two 9.5 million, are they for this year, fiscal year?
They are
I'm
for-
sorry, not for 11/12.
they are for 11/12.
Okay.
So of the 24 million owed us, 25 million owed us, we are getting paid $19 million. There, roughly. There is still $5 million to $6 million outstanding. The Chancellor's Office has yet to tell us when that money is exactly going to come to us. October might be a time, September, they don't, they're still trying to figure it out. And of course, they are dependent upon when the state tells them that the money is coming to them. As was reported last night by Renee Graves, this almost changes on a daily basis. Danny, yes.
So again, that 5 to 6 million, that would be the final payment for 11/12.
That is correct.
So they only owe us about 5 or 6 million more, and it's going to get paid sometime now. Okay.
Assuming this 9 comes in. Now, the other thing that I want to point out on this chart, back on June 28th, you can see that we borrowed $5 million, taking us up to a little over $6 million. You can see that we were able to operate on our own cash flow, and then we got our big payment on July 16th. And when we made that payment, we were able to repay the interfund loan, which came out of the GASB 64 fund, meaning that on July 17th, a couple of days ago, we had give or take $9 million in cash. Now, we have a payroll that hits the 25th. We have another payroll that hits August 1st. We have many, many, many bills to pay, and I know that from the writer's cramp that I'm getting approving different things. And even with that, we anticipate that we can get through without interfund borrowing until maybe September at the moment, right, Marie? Okay. If you recall from the last meeting, the meeting before, we did a cash flow projection that ran through roughly next February, give or take. And at that point, we indicated that between interfund borrowing and the apportionment income as we expected it to come in from the state at that time, that we would not need revenue from the TRAN, the temporary, the tax and revenue anticipation note, until perhaps next January or February. However, we're not 100% sure because we don't have all the facts in the Chancellor's office, and it's not because they won't give it to us. They don't have all the facts in the state. So at last night's board meeting, one of the agenda items was the authorization to enter into or apply for a tax and revenue anticipation note through the LA County Office of Education. There were members of the board that had a difficult time with that. They had a very difficult time with that. The thought of borrowing any money was very difficult for them. Even with the very, very low interest rate that is tied to that, by the time the dust settles on a $10 million tax and revenue anticipation note, depending on where we land, you know, and our credit, what have you, could be as low as $140,000, $150,000. However, there was still some concern because they weren't sure that, in fact, we would need that money. So they didn't want to enter into a commitment for $150,000 if they didn't know for a fact. So what they finally ended up doing is approving us applying for it, but not pulling the trigger on it until we went back to them and asked for authorization. Right, Hannah?
If I can just add to that, some of the confusion was that BRAC had spoken about a $2 million TRAN, and in the paperwork, in the board packet, the amount said not to exceed $10 million, and so that's where some of the worries came from last night.
Right. Dan? That was my question. Yeah. All right. Well, the TAN, because first of all, you can't, as far as I know, $10 million is about the smallest amount you can do a TRAN for to make it worthwhile to the underwriters and everybody who's involved. Again, the amount of money involved as far as the arbitrage and who make, the people who make money on these transactions is relatively small. So $10 million is usually the minimum amount. And if you think about it, most districts are in more trouble than we are. When I say most, those districts who are borrowing money are in much more significant trouble. So they have a larger need. But at the same time, though, we don't really know what our need could be. I mean, if the bottom continues to fall out from under us and the deferrals get worse and worse, if we're going to go to this trouble, we might as well have enough money. We use the metaphor arrows in our quiver, right? And what we meant by that was there are three ways we're going to try to balance our cash. One is the interfund borrowing. Two would be the TRAN. And three could be a revolving line of credit with a local lending agency. So last night, not only did we present the interfund borrowing report, as we promised we would, we presented the concept of the TRAN, and we further presented the concept of a revolving line of credit. We sought and got permission to begin just to let an RFQ, a request for quotations, on a line of credit in the amount of $10 million to $20 million. The idea is to have as many tools at our disposal to manage ourselves through this difficult time, imparting as little impact on students, faculty, and staff as possible. That's the idea. Now, one of the things that we'll find out when we apply for the when we go out for the RFQ on the line of credit, that probably will not be that cheap. Those things are not necessarily inexpensive. And I'm not sure that once we actually see the costs that we want to do that. Further, I'm not sure if statutorily, and I've asked Gail to work with RBC Capital and Renee Graves from VLS to find this out. I'm not sure if statutorily we can, and Marie and I talked about this morning, we can actually have a TRAN, have a line of credit, have a Measure P construction bond, and have a certificate of participation on the parking structure out there. You know, that may be more bonded indebtedness or whatever you would call it, credit, than an agency of our type is allowed to have under the law. So we may not even get to first base on that. But the point was we wanted to find out what the board would allow us to do, get them to say, yes, you may do that, look, you know, you may apply for that, and then we'll figure it out as we go along. So the point is that we're trying to do everything we can, and I go back to the TRAN. Remember, the TRAN, another reason for the $10 million, the TRAN is to balance cash flow. What we're doing in the $10.5 million cut that we're doing, we are saying that of the $10 million, we were going to use 2 of it to try to deal with our $10.5 million problem. That doesn't mean that as January, February, March, April comes along, we're not going to need all that $10 million just to make payroll. Do you guys understand that concept? Does that make sense? It's the cash we need to pay the monthly obligations. This 10.5 is to balance our accrual budget that you know, our projected budget, I should say. But along the way in the year, we need cash just to pay the things we need to pay. So that's kind of one of the differences on that. Okay, and then the next page. Any questions? Yes, Dave.
Yeah, I guess I'm confused, as probably a lot of other people were at that board meeting. This here, the $10.5 million that Dr. Rocha said that he wanted to try to enforce included a $2 million trans loan.
Right.
Then they went ahead and said, we want to take out another $10 million trans loan. That's $12 million. Okay? But you can only do one a year.
No,
so and that's why everybody got confused. Was the $2 million part of the $10 million one? Because the guy said you can go as low as $5 million. The rules change when it's over $5 million.
Yeah. Well, first of all, there's one TRAN and only one TRAN. And if we do this, the amount that we are asking the board's approval on is in the amount of $10 million, period. So of that $10 million, if this scenario that we have in place now, this 10.5 scenario that we have in front of us holds, the suggestion is that we would use $2 million of the TRAN to help with this $10.5 million issue. Okay? Any accountant in the room will tell you, any accountant out there will tell you that you can't do that. John Martin and everybody else knew that. When we made the presentation last night, we said that. So in effect, we're really throwing $8.5 million at a $10.5 million problem, $8.5 million of hard cost cuts at a $10.5 million problem, and taking $2 million from the beginning balance. We're going to lower the beginning balance by $2 million. Now Danny is shaking his head because because we're talking budget as opposed to actual numbers. Do you want to say something, Dan, before you explode?
Not right now. At some point I will. But I do have some questions on this. So.
Okay, then go ahead and ask your questions.
Well, okay. Under the capital, I'm going back to page 1, and I know you got one more page. So I don't know. Do you want to finish that one page, and then we'll go back and ask the questions?
Well, okay. I think there's 2 pages.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So
okay.
do you want?
Yeah, just go ahead.
Okay. So So the next one is as of 7/18/2012 projected budget for the General Fund 01, and this is accrual as opposed to cash. And what we do is we do a side-by-side comparison of what 11/12 and 12/13 would look like. So we have the beginning fund balance, again accrual. We started last year with the 18.8. At the moment, and when I say at the moment, as of July 18th, we are anticipating starting the year with $19.8 million. Marie, Anthony, and the accounting team are on track for a July 31st close at the moment. And so these numbers will become actuals. We'll have an actual operating statement and closing operating statement for 11/12 at that point. But in any event, we'll know what the 12/13 beginning balance is when we actually close and have a final in the 11/12. Okay, then you've got the federal funding sources. The state funding. The state funding is primarily assessment income, or FTES income from the state. So in 11/12, we anticipate collecting in the neighborhood of $75.5 million. However, because of the 6.7%, because of the 7.3% workload reduction, we know that our FTES apportionment dollars will be cut to $66.3 million, and this projected budget assumes that the governor's budget is not going to pass. The $10.5 million reduction is built into this broad projection. So,
Say that one more time. It assumes what?
it assumes that the governor's tax initiative will not pass,
Okay, yeah.
and that the $6.7 million that we are losing because of what we're told. And the reason, of course, is because that initiative doesn't, we don't know until the November 6th election, and then we'll go from there. And that tracks back to the $10.5 million document, too, in terms of the furlough cuts and some other things. Okay, local funding. Basically, local funding is tuition, out-of-state tuition. It's enrollment fees and out-of-state tuitions primarily. And property tax, out-of-state tuition, and enrollment fees. Enrollment fees are a little bit of a hard number to get your arms around, and there's a thing called a triple flip and so on and so forth, but what it really boils down to is that because of the Board of Governor waiver for students who are deemed qualified, that local revenue that we would normally collect, which helps us with our cash flow, we don't get because it's waived. Dr. Bell mentioned in a meeting yesterday that 67% of the students who come to PCC are eligible and receive the BOG waivers. So the cash that would normally come in the door, that we would get to keep, that would help operate the college for 67% of our students, doesn't come in. Now, we theoretically get reimbursed that through the assessment revenue from the state, but again, that becomes part of the whole deferral scenario. That's why that becomes important. Dave?
Okay, what I don't see in here, or correct me if I'm not seeing it, is the $6 million that they owe us for deferral, correct? So if you get that anytime next year, that would be not only $105 million, but it'd be $111 million?
That's part of our beginning balance.
Oh, so you got the $6 million in the $19 million?
Go ahead, Marie.
Revenue for 11/12.
Right.
That's in the 116. That's
11,
part of
12.
that.
Oh,
We just haven't gotten it yet, but that's what they're going to get.
okay, so that was budgeted at that time?
Yes, in 11/12.
And then then it becomes part of the 12-13 beginning balance. If we don't get it, we don't realize it in 11-12. And again, it's hard. I understand that it's hard. These are just numbers on a page. They're a budget. It's a projected budget. It's accrual, and it's not cash. And that's a big difference, and we'll talk more about that. Kevin?
Last meeting, we were talking about being proactive. So after this agenda item is over, I was hoping we can move to more proactive ideas for generating money or handling the $10.5 million.
Okay. Okay, so then you'll go through and we see, so we see that the total revenue 11-12 is 116. The total revenue for 12-13 is 105. And there's the magic 10.5, roughly. it's a 9 million something, but it's roughly there. That's the gap we're trying to close. Now, if you go down and you look at the expenditures, several of those numbers, well, let's start at the top. Academic salaries, the classified and non-academic salaries, the reductions are due primarily to reductions in staff at this point, and but even when, and then the employee benefits, which is also down, and again, it's tied to the reduction in staff situation, among other things. However, all three of those lines are still in development. There were new positions approved last night. We have not yet finalized negotiations with our healthcare providers. We don't have the final numbers yet. We will very soon. So there's still some crunching there. Now, the supplies and materials, that's a rollover number. That number could change. The other operating expenses and services, that's a rollover too. That's things like utilities and legal fees and personal services agreements and everything else that's in the budget that is not supplies and materials, more or less, right? But that's too is a rollover that we're still working on. Now, the equipment purchase is an interesting line, and Marie, why don't you go ahead and explain that one?
Purchase, last year you approved a 2 million inclusive in that account number to absorb the mid-year cut. If you remember.
Absorb what?
Mid-year cut. We had a 2 million mid-year cut.
Yeah.
Okay, so you approved that. So what I did here is for discussion purposes for a projection, and I know you will question where did it go. I tried to split it between the two salary, which is the academic and the classified. So instead of taking in the proposed budget cut in its totality, I reduce it. So we would have, it's like, it's a factor that's being absorbing the reduction. So technically, if you look at the 1213 of academic salary, if I did not do that, the figure there should only be 52 million.
So
I spread it out.
okay.
So that it would not get a bigger hit.
So the trigger was 2.5 million. The decision was made, I guess, to absorb the 500,000, but actually put 2 million aside if in fact there was an actual need for that cash to operate the college. And what we'll see in the operating statement is whether that cash was used or not as we go forward. I'm trying to remember what it said for May in the May operating statement on that line item. That cash was still there, right, Marie?
Not the cash, but we budgeted for it.
I should say the budget, right? The 2 million was in that line. In other words, that money was not allocated.
It wasn't
is my
allocated
point.
last year, and so for next year, you allocated that 2 million between academic salaries and classified.
We put it where we thought it really needed to be.
To be fair enough.
Okay.
Okay, so that's what that difference is. And other outgo, we just roll this up. Now, then you'll see the total expenditures. Again, the revenue is 105 million. The expenditures is 107. So in effect, it's 2 million above. So on the under part, we balance the budget with the TRAN. And in effect, that's not proper accounting, and you really can't do that. But we're still, we're indicating it's a balanced budget when in fact it's a deficit budget, deficit finance budget. And that 2 million will likely, the auditors will not let us call it the TRAN. We're going to have to take it from the beginning balance. That at the end of the day, that's what will happen if in fact we need that money next year. Okay, last but not least, also in the board packet last night was a request for positions. And as I recall, it was 35 budgeted positions, 7 new positions in the areas of administrative services, a new internal auditor, compliance officer that would report to the president's office. There were positions in information technology, instruction, student learning services, educational services, and executive assistants confidential for several offices on campus. For the time being, and I emphasize for the time being, the information technology positions were pulled off the table because we are trying to identify more clearly where the expense is going to come to fund these positions. But I expect that we will resolve that shortly. But those were pulled off. So the board, after much discussion, approved going forward with these positions. Now, part of the discussion had to do with this college staffing request chart, where we provided a SERP, Supplemental Early Retirement Program, position recap. You will recall that in the 10-11 school year, as of last June 30th, 92 of our colleagues retired. They took advantage of the SERP. SERP 2, which went into effect basically January 1 of 2012, resulted in 7 people retiring. And SERP 3, which just concluded, resulted in 14 people going. So there was a total of 113 positions tied to the retirement program. Now, in reconciling this document to the new positions, as Anthony went through this year's 11-12 budget, beyond the 21 SERP 2 and SERP 3 positions that were funded in this budget, in the 11-12 budget, Anthony found 9 other positions, at least at the time we put this chart together. I think, Anthony, you might still be looking, or is 9 the number? 9 is the number. So there are 9 positions in the budget that are funded, and there were 21 positions in the budget that are funded.
Wait. There's nine positions that aren't filled, or what are you saying?
Yeah, exactly. There are 9 positions that, other than SERP, became vacant in 2011-12.
Okay.
And
I have a clarification. Last night, the positions weren't approved. They were just approved for posting.
Yeah.
Just to clarify that to this committee. And the deadline for people to apply to these positions is August 1st. So foreseeably, they won't all be filled, and they weren't all approved, just so everyone is clear.
Yeah, I guess I would take a little bit of exception with that, because the normal process is, in fact, this is the first time that we've actually taken positions to the board for approval to be posted. Normally, that is a responsibility of the administration and given to the administration to make that decision. However, because Dr. Roach's desire to be transparent and open and clear during particularly these current times, he took these to the board. The board approved for posting. Hannah is absolutely correct, just as she is correct on any position that comes to the board, even now, even when the district had a lot of money, that every hiring decision is a decision of the Board of Trustees. In other words, I go through an interview, everything else, and until the board says you're hired, no one's hired. So what the board requested last night is what they have all the time anyway. But what the board was trying to say is that in particular, now they are sensitive to the needs of the district. Without getting into the long presentation from last night, Dr. Roach's point when he presented this is that these positions, in the opinion of the administration, were absolutely necessary to support the institution from an accreditation point of view and from a good business practice point of view. And every one of these positions tie directly to that. But as Hannah's saying, there were board members. I think the vote was 4 yes and 3 abstentions, as I recall. And there was one board member, Trustee Fellow, was not there last night. And the abstentions were about the fact that, until all the numbers come in, no one's actually, they were not absolutely comfortable with saying yes. They weren't uncomfortable enough to say no. So in effect, the official record, right, Mary, is 4 yes. That's the official. It's unanimous, so it passes unanimously in the. Where's Simon, the Roberts Rule guy? But that's that. So that's that. So I want to make that clear. Yes, Dave.
Do you know if the new positions for classified anyway went through the unions? Because we do have a right to look at the job descriptions and the money that's being involved in that.
Well, there are 5 custodian positions on that list.
Yeah, but those are for the backfill custodians that was.
Right. So what?
Any new positions that were created?
Any new CSEA positions?
Well, any really, realistically, whether it's issue or
Oh,
whatever.
yeah, no, you're absolutely right. If there are any on this list, and I don't recall if there are, you're absolutely right. Any new classification has got to be vetted by issue or CSEA or whomever. And in fact, we just did that, Julio, didn't we, with one of the new distance ed online positions, which wasn't on this list, but it was a previous one not too long ago.
That was the only one.
Yeah. So the answer is yes.
But it is a process that I'm new to, and so I've got some things that I need to do with some of the positions, even though all of mine were essentially pulled. But still, as I now need to work that type of discussions into the process of any positions that I would be creating in ITS area. There's nothing new in the facilities side with the custodians or the painters, but there are some in the ITS side. But it's a process I'm learning, so I will certainly do that.
I believe that the business analyst is a new position, right? The business analyst is a new classification.
Yeah, business analyst. There are others like web administrator and video engineer. They're not on they weren't on the original list, but they are part of the initial submittals that I've done, and it's new. I know that the 2 director positions that are that we have on the list are positions that are part of the management group. So I do need to have a discussion concerning those 2. So again, I'll catch up with that process.
Yeah. Okay. So going through this chart again, so 113.9. So there's a subtotal of 122 available positions at the moment. During the 10-11, we hired approximately 22 faculty. In 11-12, we hired 10 faculty. So that brought us to 90 vacant positions, and the proposed hires at the time we did this were approximately 34, and so we're basically stating that there's an overall reduction of 56 positions. Now, when you do the math on that, I didn't bring it all with me here in terms of how it all came together, but those 56 positions total about $2.4 million in expense, and that $2.4 million went to helping to balance the 12-13 budget. So we came out of this process with $2.3 million, with upwards of the total value of the served positions is about $12 million, give or take, and all the money that came out of that went to balance the budget. In this particular group, we're going to add another $2.3 million to help balance 12-13 going forward. And that's where we are right now. So that's what we went over last night. More questions if you'd like. We can talk about the 10.5. We can talk about what Kevin wants to talk about.
No.
We can talk about what Danny wants to talk about. No, let's do Dave and then Danny, and then we'll get to you, Kevin, after we're done with this, okay?
My understanding, you said that only 9 were budgeted. These 56 were not budgeted, is that correct? So
No.
So if they're not in the budget, how are you going to balance it?
Okay. Let's try it again real quick here. we had an overall SERP vacant position, 1, 2, and 3 of 113 positions. We had 9 more that were budgeted in 11-12 and are currently vacant. That gave us 122. Out of the 122, we hired back over 2 years 32 faculty. We have 90 vacant positions. Of the 90 vacant positions, we're proposing 34 positions.
Let me start right. The 90 positions that were vacant, were they in the budget as to be filled?
From 10-11, 11-12, the answer is yes.
Yeah, that's
The answer is yes. They were.
because I got confused when it says only 9 were budgeted, but yet we had 90 vacancies.
The answer is yes. Yeah.
I remember when Dr. Costa used to do the budget, he would not put those, the ones that were frozen, he would not add them into the budget.
Yeah. Well, they're in the budget now. At least these are right now.
Who wants to comment on that?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Some changes that they
What we started doing was sweeping the budget. So
Right.
the position, some of the positions may have still been sitting there, but there was no dollar value attached to them. These 9 that he's speaking of are positions that had dollar values attached to them. So there's actually a budget there that was never expensed. So we had kind of a saving, so to speak. But the rest of them, there were $0.
And so the SERP 2 and 3, people who left in the middle of 11-12 and people who left at the end of 11-12, there's money there for them. They were budgeted as well, 2 and 3, because we budgeted them for 11-12. So that number plus the 9, that's real money. We offset what we offset, and 2.3 million left of that real money goes back into the other budget categories of the college for 12-13 in round numbers. Okay, Julio and then Danny.
Quick question, comment, I guess. Going back to the IT positions, because I know they were pulled. They were supposed to be funded through the fund number 41, the capital outlay, and I was under the impression that that was just a one-year funding.
Yeah.
So how do you guys expect to fund it,
You may have just stumbled on why they were pulled, Julio. It's a mystery, actually, to Vice President Cable and I how that happened, to be honest with you. Yeah. But we're circling around to do what we need to do. The IT needs these positions, and somehow we got to figure out a way to deal with this in one form or another.
The issue on the whole really has to do with how we're setting budget priorities. And we need to make some really hard decisions about some of this stuff. And that's part of it, and it's all tied together. It's all tied together with faculty association. It's all tied together with any other types of decisions that we need to make with respect to cost issues. And so we've got to work through it all. And yeah, you can't fund something like that with one-time funds. So got to make some decisions.
I have a question. So we pulled the IT positions, is that correct?
That's correct.
Then how come on the California registry, number 1 and 2 are still being flown?
Actually, because, and we had talked about that in an HR meeting this morning, and the first thought was to pull them off the website. And then Vice President Cable and a couple of others talked about that and said, well, if we are actually going to seriously figure out a way to try to fund these, let's at least leave the advertising out there, get a pool of candidates to look at. If we take it offline, then we don't have a pool. We have to start all over again. Any position that's advertised at any time can be pulled at any time for any reason. So that's why it's still up there. Okay, I think Danny's been very patient.
Okay.
No, I don't think. Danny has been very patient.
Oh, I know, I don't have a lot of patience, what can I say?
No, you don't. I thought you were on a vacation today. I was kind of looking forward to it.
Okay, so we'll just go in reverse from your last page
Yes,
and
sir.
forward. So First question is, on these CERT positions, can you break down of the 92, the 7, and the 14, how many were faculty, how many are classified, how many are executive management? Do you have those numbers or no?
Oh, I'm sure we have them. I don't have them
Don't
with
have 'em
me.
now, okay.
Yeah.
So one thing to keep in mind is, I believe the number for faculty in the first group was 42 or something like that.
That number sticks in my mind, too.
And then there are other faculty on here. So when they're looking at these positions, well, okay, let me skip down to the faculty hires. It says 32. Now, you say there were 22 hired in 10-11. So that means they were hired in August of 2010. Way before the SERP started, way before all this. I mean, if they were for 10-11, they would have been hired in August of 2010, correct? Those 22? Because if they worked in the years 2010 to 11, which started July 1st, 2010, and ended June 30th, 2011, they had to be on board about August of 2010.
Here's what I'm thinking. I know for a fact we hired the 32 faculty. In order to be compliant with the full-time faculty obligation number for the current year, we had to commit to the district, to the state, that we would hire an additional 10 faculty.
For 11-12.
In 11-12, we had to hire, which we are right now, for the 12-13 year.
No.
I've got 10 faculty starting. The district has 10 faculty starting this summer in a new faculty orientation in about a week, right, Dan? And those faculty will begin their tenure with the district in 12-13. They were hired in 11-12 in order to start their tenure in 12-13. The 22 faculty were hired 10-11 in order to start their tenure in 11-12. In other words, we had 22 new faculty start work last August something for this year.
Okay.
So those 32 faculty were hired. And I'll take it one step further. The full-time faculty obligation number, based upon our workload reduction number, taking our FTS down to something on the order of 18,008 from a high of 23,000 something some years ago, might require us to hire 5 additional faculty, give or take, this coming year. If we don't hire those faculty, we have 2 choices with that. If we don't seek permission from the state to put that in some temporary holding pattern, then the state can fine us up to $65,000, give or take, for each one of those vacant positions. However, there are many districts throughout the state who couldn't hire faculty if their fiscal lives depended on it, and so there's many districts that are, quote-unquote, out of compliance with that regulation right now, and the Chancellor's Office and the Board of Governors are trying to figure out how to deal with that whole situation. So, long story short, I think we're going to need to hire maybe as many as 5 faculty to maintain our full-time faculty obligation number, which under our current funded FTS base of 19,500 or whatever the number is right now, I don't have it off the top of my head, is about 378 full-time faculty.
Okay. All right, so that's that page, I believe. I thought I had one other question, but that's okay. Did you want to?
No,
Oh,
I wanted to ask on instruction and student learning services.
Yeah.
Number 5, Dean Student Affairs. We currently have an assistant dean of student affairs. Why is there being a current as well as one second, as well as I believe number 6 is an accreditation, but I just wanted to double check.
Okay.
are we switching to the specific
I'm going
hires?
back to the administrative hiring list.
He's looking at the hiring list.
I wanted to finish going through this, but, that's okay.
No. We thought you were done.
Oh, that was just page 1.
I'll defer your question. I apologize, Dan.
He's
We'll
never
come back to
done.
I'm sorry, I'm not trying to hog the
He's
time.
never
If he wants
done.
to cover that thing, go ahead.
Listen, if anybody hogs this thing, it's me, right? So go ahead.
All right, So going back to, let's go back to the first page, because I had a couple questions on that. So on the general unrestricted fund, it looks like between the, so on 01, the beginning fund is 18.8 or 9, right in there, and we're ending with 19.9. So basically, we've added about $1 million. Is that right? To the positive.
Go ahead, Marie, and answer that question. The answer is yes.
Yes.
But he's got, the
Tentatively.
follow-up question is why?
We underspent.
That's right.
Oh, okay.
That's why.
That's why if you go back to your projected budget, we're reflecting the 9 million as the beginning balance, wherein
Right.
if the board approves, we can get some of the shortfall in the budget from the beginning balance.
No, that's exactly my point, because I want to talk about actual numbers, not budget numbers, but we always talk about the budget numbers, so. But anyway, okay, so it's because we underspent, so we have an extra $1 million. We lived within our means, in fact, $1 million below,
Right.
at least at this point. Okay.
Tentative, I'm just saying.
Tentatively. Okay, and so this number right next to it where it says expenditures year-to-date, 110,860. Is that the actual expenditures for 11-12 so far?
Yes, that's the actual so far.
So in the final month of this year, we spent over $15 million. Because on the 11-12 operating statement as of May 31st, we had spent $95.6 million. So we're now $15 million more than that.
Yes, and the reason for that
Okay.
is because of the payroll. On the month of June, instead of only having one payroll, there's another one payroll that's being added, because the way the county works, they don't issue the payroll not until July 1 to 10.
Okay, but that second payroll is for July.
No, that second payroll is still for the period ending June 30.
Well, like my paycheck for the summer, does it include the summer checks?
Yes, that is part of our accrual.
Okay, but so you're paying that in the 11-12 year and counting it as an expense for 11-12, but my paycheck paid me at least a week into July.
Yes,
Okay, so
Is-
we charge the expenses for the next year in this year.
Well,
Is that-
well, some of them, well, no, because the summer school starts. Marie, go ahead.
Danny, for instance, C1, the C1, the certificated monthly employee, check that they receive in July 1 was actually the payment for the services they rendered from June 1 to June 30.
Right, everything's in arrears.
As far as the people receiving, they look at that as June, but that is really the earning pertaining to June.
Right.
Well, I get a check on July 1. We don't get checks on July
No,
1.
certificated
Oh,
monthly.
certificated, you're talking monthly. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, no.
I'm giving you an example. That's how it works.
You mean 12 monthly? Because, oh, I see. You have some people, I realize, I see what you're saying.
About
You
a
have some
third
people
of the
that are paying
faculty
12 months.
fall
I'm
into
paid
that.
on 10 months. That's why
Right,
I'm a
it's
little
about a third of the faculty opt for the 12. Dan's up there. Can we take a question from Dan real quick, or do you
Yes,
want?
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a question about the staffing request. Looking down this, I don't have the exact numbers, but the numbers for SERP, as I recall, most of those SERP retirees were faculty or classified staff. And I know you're filling as many as you can for the faculty, but the new hires, at least what I heard at last night's Board of Trustees meeting, seem to be mostly administrators. And it seems like we're shifting positions from faculty and classified up to administration. I know you do need some administrators, but I wonder how many of those you actually really need.
I'll tell you what, if I can, that relates to Kevin's question. Let's let Danny finish
Okay.
this, and then we'll come back to the positions, if that's okay. Thank you.
Actually, it kind of relates to Danny's question or request earlier about how it's broken down, because that would be kind of interesting to, while we make the statement that most positions were such certain classification, I think that's probably a very important analysis that could be done with all three of those CERPs. Were they management? Were they faculty? Were they classified? All that stuff, just so that we're clear.
Yeah, we actually have that information.
I'm sure you do.
And is it easily sortable? Can we bring it next time? Yeah, Maggie can provide that. Okay. Yeah, we can easily provide that.
Sorry, Dan.
That's
No, it's
okay.
all right. So, but it clearly includes some of July, because I got a paycheck that included, it didn't pay me for the first week of summer school. It paid me for at least the first 2 weeks of summer school, which would have taken me through the first week of July. I just want to make sure I'm clear on that. I'm not criticizing it, I just want to understand it.
Okay, we do it, Danny, since they have put the adjunct, okay? Equal monthly payments, like 4 equal monthly or 3 monthly.
Right.
Within a semester. The practice we have been doing is any payroll that are being paid between July to July 10 is C1 and E4. When I say C1, those are the certificated monthly. The E4 are the classified monthly. All those services are for the month of June. So
Right.
we just have to consider everything, and since summer classes also starts somewhere in June, we don't compute day by day
Right,
that
okay.
you're here.
But, so the expenses for 11-12 do include, for some people, at least the first week of summer school, and some people, I think they got half their pay. But anyway, it includes some of July's pay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All
And
right.
of course, that's consistent year after year after year, so, you know,
Okay.
the impact kind of evens itself out, I would suspect.
All right, then my next question on that sheet is, under the AIS, the $14 million, which I think the AIS is important, so I'm not criticizing that, but what I read, I didn't actually go to the board meeting last night, but the cost analysis was over a 5-year period. So you're putting in here, you're designating, and I understand, but I just think everybody needs to understand, we're not going to spend $14 million next year
Yeah.
on, so these numbers are, if you don't put another penny into the capital outlay, we can pay for the biggest expenditure at the school, the biggest problem at this school, or one of the biggest, at least technology-wise, clearly, all right now with the money we have in those accounts. Because according to the 5-year cost ownership, the first year we're only going to spend about $5.9 million.
Right.
Okay.
That's correct.
So
And-
I just want to make sure everybody realizes
Yeah,
that.
and I think I know as I mentioned last night, and I think as I mentioned when I went through this, even though it just says AIS banner technology conversion, it includes much more technology than just the EIS, right, Dwayne?
That's correct. Even though the point of the 14 million total cost of ownership is to look at that decision as a budget decision that needs to be planned. However that gets spread out, you know, but you're right, from a cash flow, if we looked at it that way, we only need $6 million of that in first year to handle the AIS piece. There are other pieces like Unified Call Center that'll cost another $1 million that are not part of just the AIS, but it's other components that we will need to address. Network infrastructure, support.
But that's all in here. That's budgeted.
That's not in that. This is just the AIS. This is just the hardware and the software, the services and the software for that. Yeah. Sorry, it's an expensive proposition.
And then the other piece of that, we have to remember that Fund 41 N64 is our interfund borrowing fund, and the more that we expend out of capital outlay, the less we have for the interfund borrowing, the more that we need the TRAN, the more that we need
Right.
something
Well,
else to get
that was
us
part
through.
of my point, because if you thought you were going to spend all that money, you'd say, well, we couldn't borrow against that. But we're only going to spend about $6 million out of there for that anyway.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah,
All
I
right.
think so at the moment.
Then on the self-insurance fund, well, I guess it's corrected over here. At the end of on line 64, all the way over to the right, it says $10,295,000, and I thought you put that $5 million back in there.
But
So
We didn't put it back in until after this was done.
after this was done, so there is $15 million.
This is dated the 16th, and the 17th is when we made the transfer.
Okay.
So we're back where we want
right.
to be there.
All right. Okay, then on the 2012-13 budget projections. Okay, as you said, this is accrual, this is a budget. Okay, so I just want everybody to understand that these numbers are all budgeted numbers. So particularly when you go to the expenditures, okay, for academic salaries, classified salaries, all that stuff, there's about $101 million budgeted. And last week, we were told it's $110 million, so that's a $9 million difference. And secondly, this isn't what we actually have expended. Now, I know you're getting updates, and that number is going to be larger, but I have 3 handouts that I do want to hand out at some point. I don't need to do it right now, but I do want to hand them out and just explain them briefly. It will not be anything like yesterday.
Okay.
I promise.
That's all right.
10 minutes maybe.
Okay.
But I just want people to understand some of the numbers, and I know they're not all updated, and I know updates are coming, and so it's not always completely updated.
That's fine.
But
10 minutes is a budget?
Yeah.
No. I'm promise. I promise. Okay. So, but anyway, I mean, because if you're looking at this thing, you're going, "Oh my goodness, we spent every penny that we received last year."
Right.
But we're not
Right.
there. So.
And let me add this very quickly. At the request of our faculty association colleagues, we will be providing to the association by noon Tuesday, and probably earlier than that, an updated operating statement that shows actual cash expended, not closing, not year end yet, but getting closer. So that'll give you guys a much better sense of actual cash expended for 11-12. And that same document we'll bring to BRAC next week, and we'll share that document with this group, and that will be an indication of the cash expended this year. So now we have a couple of choices. We can let Danny do his budget overview, or we can go to Kevin's and Dan's question and break it up a little bit. What's the pleasure of the group?
Go to the questions while Danny is handing out his things, if that's okay.
Okay. Danny, is that okay with you?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's start with Kevin's question again, and then we'll go to Dan. Your question had to do with item 5 and 6, right?
Yes, 5 and 6.
Okay. In general, thank you. In general, as Dr. Bell is currently the Vice President of Instruction and Student Learning Services, so we have blended 2 positions together. It is the intent of the administration, and every indication is it's the intent of the Board of Trustees, to continue those 2 positions collapsed into one, seemingly from what Dr. Rocha understands.
Are we talking about 5 or 6?
I'm just talking about the instruction student
both.
services
Gotcha.
in general.
Wonderful.
So as a result of that, the current 5, which is an assistant dean of student affairs, is being considered to be increased to a full dean of student affairs, because as Dr. Bell takes on all these duties, he needs to reallocate and delegate certain of his responsibilities to, in this case, the student affairs person. So it was felt that it would be appropriate to move these positions up to a certain degree, and the management salary schedule is such that whomever the successful candidate is, internal or external, there's a number of factors that actually drive what the actual salary will be, and it's very dependent upon the individual candidate. So we don't know where the actual salary will end up. Presumably it'll be a little bit more. I think for very round budgeting purposes, Marie has added roughly 5% in addition to the value of the budgeted positions that we have. The same is true that we have an associate dean of counseling and student success right now, and if I recall that new position description, it encompasses counseling and student success. So many of these positions are promotional opportunities for faculty and colleagues here at PCC. So again, every search will be what we like to say proper and thorough. And so the point being is that these positions are elevated a little bit, but we anticipate that a number of these opportunities will go to incumbent faculty and or managers.
So I was looking actually at the Dean of Student Affairs, and the responsibilities seem vastly the same. Is there a way to find out which responsibilities are new since they're getting us promotion?
I believe, and I haven't looked at that closely lately, but I think one of the new responsibilities of that position will be the athletics for the college.
The athletics?
As the kinesiology and health goes to natural sciences, as agreed to through our shared governance process, athletics needs to go somewhere, and it was my sense that the student affairs dean was going to be responsible for college athletics. Is that on the description?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, it's not there. That's
Might be other duties as assigned. How's that?
I'm just wondering. They seem the exact same, and I'm wondering. This is such a sketchy time for our budget. If they're not getting a lot or a vast difference in responsibilities, it's kind of something that's worrying us.
I think that I'll have to defer that one to Dr. Bell.
Okay.
And maybe Hannah, I know you meet regularly with Dr. Bell now, so that'd be a good opportunity to talk to him about that at that point. Okay. Now, Dan, to answer your question a little bit, try to. Your question is why so many management positions in a time. Well, I think there's two answers to that Dr. Rocha tried to in part last night. One is we are vastly exposed in our business areas of the college, and certainly the recent situation that we're in bears evidence of that. The controller / executive director of fiscal is an upgraded director of fiscal services position that Odessa Walker had. The executive director of business services is an upgraded position that Sherry Hassan had. The executive director of facilities is a vacant position that's been vacant for way too long, but it was one of the positions that Dr. Van Pelt held while he was also the vice president, first the interim vice president and then the vice president of administrative services. And then the human resources executive director is one less infamous vice president and will now be heading up HR. So that's what those four positions are. You might recall that even though it indicates supervisor of human resources is a new position, it's new only in that it hasn't been funded for a couple of 3 years, but in fact it was the Melinda Polo position that Melinda had for many years. And our HR department right now is really in need of some help. Dan.
Okay. When you say executive director, salary-wise, how does that relate to vice president level position?
The executive director positions are contemplated to be in the 135 to 155 range.
All right.
I mean, everything is at the end of the day, it's commensurate. What is it? Commensurate with experience and education, or dependent upon that. Dr. Rocha was asked the question, I believe, by Trustee Brown last night about why executive director versus vice president. Dr. Rocha said that he wants all of these executive director level positions to be part of the president's cabinet. He also wants them all to be on contracts. He doesn't want them to be part of the bargaining unit. Well, the management is a meet and confer unit. He doesn't want them part of the management association because that infers certain rights and privileges over a period of time that if someone wasn't working out, it's much more difficult to resolve a situation. But as an executive director, as a vice president, as a president, we're all on basically year-to-year contracts. And it's just much more easier to deal with something that is not working out. That's the truth.
All right. But except for people who have retreat rights, isn't that the same for like the academic deans who are hired from the outside? They're on year-to-year contracts too, aren't they?
Yeah, but based upon their classification, I guess everybody can get a March 15th notice,
yeah.
But there's just other issues associated with it. I mean, if counsel were here, she could explain a little bit better. It's just easier when you've got a contract.
Okay.
from what we're told. And the salary levels are not going to be, I mean, for example, our division deans are in that 135 to 155 range. So, you know, I don't think we're going to be dramatically out of whack in these positions. Okay. And then the other big reason for the management position is that, as many of you have seen and heard through, you know, the Accrediting Commission of Community and Junior Colleges is coming down harder and harder and harder on community colleges. Many of you have already heard about San Francisco City College being sent all the way to show cause. You know, forget the warning, forget the probation. We're going to throw you all the way to show cause. What's happening is the commission is going around college after college and determining that the management ranks have been so decimated that not only the fiscal management becomes a problem, but it becomes not possible to deal with the course, the program, the general education outcomes requirements, the assessment, the program review, the institutional effectiveness, all those things that are required for accreditation. And if we don't have people in place to do these things and work with our faculty to get them done and what have you, we are incredibly exposed. The other thing is that we have our next accreditation visit in 2015. It is essential that we get our administration pretty much locked down by this fall to show some level of stability and be able to provide evidence that, in fact, we are moving forward with our educational master plan and that we're making progress. If we don't have that level of stability, they will come after us in a big way. So that's another reason why the president really wants to get this nailed down. Yes, Kevin.
I would like to make a motion. I would like to, if it's okay, I would like to move Danny's presentation to the beginning of next week as the budget update for. We're going to be doing hard numbers anyway. I would like his presentation then, and I think it would be better. How do you feel? Well, I need a second.
You're on vacation, right?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I'm not going to be here for the next 2 weeks. I know you're excited about that. But so, otherwise, I'd be more than happy to wait till next week.
Yeah, just let it die. It's fine with me.
David.
Yeah, I had a question on that. In the IT section, I mean, you have the vice president and then you have Dale Pittman. Why do you need 2 more directors? That I'm not understanding.
Beg pardon?
Total of 4 managers in the department.
Vice President Cable has left.
I was just curious that, you know, why are we adding 2 more? Because we're getting a new system, why do we still need 2 more managers? And then all these business analysts, I mean, what are they going to do year after year?
I thought the AI system was going to cut down on our need for employees to a certain extent. But anyway, I don't know.
But anyway, I was just curious on that one. I'd like one more thing, if possible. Now, I also won't be here next week. But on the CERT, on the college staffing request, can I get how many positions are actually frozen? I mean, this is just a CERT, correct? We have other positions that we did not fill that are still there out in the open.
Dave, that's a good question. I'm trying to remember. Didn't we had a number at one point, Anthony, didn't we, of how many overall swept positions or unfunded positions there were since like 2007, 2008?
That's the entire cost center 3,000.
So, but let's see if we can get a handle on that. For some reason, sticking in my mind is 240, 250 positions over the, you know, since this whole budget scenario, the 2007-8, since the fiscal crisis hit. So that, I want to, 248, 240, for some reason it's sticking in my head.
To say that they're frozen, though, is really not.
That's correct.
Housed in cost center 3001, if and when someone needed a person.
Yeah, we've always had kind of a soft freeze, if you will, and the approach has been that if deemed absolutely essential for the college, So, so the intent going forward from last night on is to take these positions to the board for further review. But, for example, yesterday, with Dr. Roach's approval, we approved a posting of a painter position. Alex retired. As you know, there's an ever amount of things to paint on this campus, and I guess Sam is the only remaining painter right now. So, and at one point we had how many painters?
4.
We had 4. We went to 2. Alex retired, and Dr. Rocha made the decision to fill at least the second position. So that's a good example of a position that's in that 3001 or would be in that 3001, and it was deemed to do that. But there are many in that 3001 cost center that have been sitting vacant for several years.
I understand it's about $2 million worth of vacancy.
Yeah, but then we get to this, to the swept language. But yeah, the value of that, and I'll tell you that 100,000 per position number is a very good number, as it turns out. On average, every position at this college, between salary, health, welfare, HWB, health, welfare, and benefits, is roughly about $100,000. And that number really was drilled home to me when I looked at the SERP numbers, because it actually worked out that way. Okay, so I think we're going to let Danny do his presentation.
Yeah, and I just thought of one more question, and I don't know if it can be answered right now, but if the expenditures on your chart are about 110 million 9, and our budget was 116, so it's about 5.2 million difference, and we only added 1 million to the ending balance. Where is the other 4 million or so?
You know, Marie's not here, but let me respond this way. We'll have a better fix on that next week.
Yeah, that's
and then the other thing is, when I sat down with Marie, Danny, yesterday after the FA negotiations, and I asked her about, I told her what we needed. She said, anytime, any day, anybody from the FA, you or whomever, wants to come in and sit down and go through every number, she's ready, willing, and able. So
I know she's busy right now. I don't want
no,
to.
my point is that it's an open book. So to the extent that you wanna go in and just verify or whatever, we're open to that.
Well, I appreciate that. So I'm not suggesting I don't trust anything.
No, but you just need to know.
Yeah. Thank you.
No, we get it.
Okay, so what I'd like to do, and again, I'll try to make this very brief, hopefully 10 minutes, is the first one, the color one you have, is something that was handed out to us. Did you get all these?
Yeah, I got them. I'm all set. Thanks,
Okay.
Danny.
Okay. This is the operating statement for 2011-12, and it ends May 31st, so it doesn't have the final month in. So some of the numbers we were just given today are updates to this, but I'll try to make those adjustments as I talk. So this is the basis for the 2 other charts that I have here, for the most part. I mean, some of this is from some other places, but in essence, it's from this chart, okay? So what I did is, because we were given a presentation last week, told that our employee costs are 110 million, and there's another 10 million, that's 120 million. Next year, we're going to get 105 million. We got a $15 million problem. And then there was a $10.5 million reduction plan that was presented to the board last night. It was presented to us. We voted on all that. Okay, so we're all aware of that. And that just didn't seem to add up to me, so I went and got this and added these numbers together to figure out what was going on. So I wanted to get actual numbers because those are all budget numbers. So if you look under actual expenditures, the first column there is the actual expenditures in the 3 key areas for all employees. This is total employee costs. The first gray line there, up through May 31st, was $86.2 million. Okay? Are you with me? I'm on the page, not the cash flow page. The page that says summary of 2011-12 budget as of 5/31/12. The smaller print, because I couldn't get it bigger on one page. Okay? So on that first column, if you go down, it says under the first gray line, that is a total of the employee costs through May 31st of this last fiscal year. Okay? So 11 months out of 12 months, we spent total employee costs $86.2 million. The column next to it, where it says 1/12 at the top, 1/12 June, what I did is I extrapolated if we spent exactly what we spend every month, that's how we would spend another $7.8 million, and the gray line there, the $94 million, is what we would spend on total employee costs. And if you're not with me, let me know. And then the column next to that is we've used a round number of $10 million a month in costs. So using that formula, and 90% of those costs are employees, so that means $9 million of the $10 million would have been expenditures on employees. So our total costs in the last fiscal year that just ended, June 30th, would be approximately $95.25 million. Okay? Now again, I am extrapolating that last month, and apparently the costs are a little higher for that month. So this month, this is going to be a little low, but you can see that that's a $15 million difference from what we were told our employee costs are last week. He said it was 110, and that may be what you budget, but we're actually expending approximately $95.25 million. It'll probably be a little more, maybe it'll be 96, 97, another million or two, but if it's not a $15 million difference, it's a $13 million difference or a $12 million difference, but it's a big difference. Okay. So then there was supplies, about $10 million, and you can see what we actually expended, $9.3 million, extrapolated out on the next column, it would be about 10.2, and if we go with the $10 million per month, it's about 10.4. So that number was pretty accurate. Okay? So we're pretty close to that. So total expenditures as of May 31st, back in the first column again, $95.6 million rounded up, okay, 95.6. That's not $120 million. That's about $14.5 million less than $120 million, which is what we were told is our operating budget, okay? And it may be our budget, but it isn't our actual expenditures, and there's a big difference between your budget and your actual expenditures. Again, extrapolated out, we would end up spending $104. If with the 10-month, it would be $105, but we've now been told today it's $110. So I was off by $4.5 million. My numbers can still show that we can. So if we don't do anything different next year, absolutely nothing different next year, we're going to get $105.5 million. So we spent, apparently now, $110, but I'm going to show you. So that's where we are. So then let me go down to the next section. Savings not included in the 11-12 budget. In other words, things that are different for this fiscal year than they were for last fiscal year. So we spent $105.6 million. Well, sorry, now we're at 110. But starting in 12-13, we cut 578 sections, which is approximately a $3 million savings. So that's $3 million we won't spend. So if the number's 110, we're down to 107. If it was 105, it was down to 102, but you get the idea, okay? So we're down to 107. Then, from the SERP, for 11-12, what wouldn't have been included as far as savings go, now I'm not talking about actual cash that they put in an account that they saved, but what would reduce your ongoing employee costs, that was the whole point of SERP, okay, is half of the people that retired in SERP 2 because they retired halfway into the year. So we did not realize half of their savings as far as the bottom line goes in 11-12 that we will in 12-13. So I only counted half. I didn't count any of the first SERP. None of that savings is part of the bottom line savings because those people retired before 11-12 started. So we realized all those savings on the bottom line for 11-12. But for the second SERP, we only realized half of it because they retired in December. And for the third SERP, which again, they're much smaller numbers, but we didn't realize any of it because they just retired on June 30th. So all their savings to the bottom line of employee costs will transfer into this year, but they were not present last year. So then you have the cost of annuities, and again, I I knew the real number for the first SERP. The other two, I extrapolated out if it's the same percentage roughly. It's about one, I think it turned out to be, where is it? I don't know why I have an average there. There should be a number of $150,000. $1.5 million, excuse me, is the cost of annuities or some, well, I apologize. Something isn't right here, but I know the calculation is right. And then there was a cost. They did say they were going to hire back 5 people. And again, there's some discrepancy in what was said today. And again, I'm not saying you're wrong. I'd have to redo my numbers if that's correct. But assuming the hire back number is 500 that will be added to our cost here, that total number, oh, I'm sorry, I included all that in there. So from the SERP savings, the half of the SERP 2 and all of SERP 3, then you have to subtract the cost of annuities. Then you subtract the hire backs, which we were told was 5 for this round, which at an average cost of 100,000 is 500. So total with the SERP, half of SERP 2 and half SERP 3, the gray line there is our total, about 1.3 million savings to the bottom line. Again, there may be some adjustments to this because there may be some more hires than I thought, but roughly. So 3 million savings from last year to this year on the reduced sections, $1.3 million savings on resulting from SERP, even including the additional costs and hire backs or some of the hire backs. And then we were told, and again, there's no guarantee, I suppose, that it'll be realized, but I think we spent about $1 million on replacing the lights, and we're told that it was going to save about $750,000. So that wasn't realized last year, but it should be realized this year. So that's a total of about $5 million that we should have less in expenditures this year. If we do everything else exactly the same as we did last year, then we should have $5 million less in expenditures. So with the new number of $110 million, we're down to $105 million. Well, let me go with my numbers because they're here and you can see them, and then I'll. So no changes to the expenditures under these numbers. We would expend about $100,500,000, $100.5 million. But we're going to get $105.5 million. So we're going to have a surplus of about $5 million. So now the number's about $5 million more. So I guess we won't have that $5 million surplus, but we can live within the means that we have already been living in. And all my point is that we're told there's a crisis and we're $15 million short or we're $10 million short, and we have to make drastic changes to how we do things around here, and I just don't see it in the real numbers. Now, if you use the budget numbers, it's true, because the budget numbers turn out to look like we're about $10 million short. But the real numbers, the actual numbers, don't show that. The second chart, just briefly, I will acknowledge, and there is going to be some cash flow problems, but cash flow is very different from a budget, okay? You have a budget, and I know there have been deferments, and those deferments are what's causing the cash flow problem. So money in the bank, as we saw from one of the charts that Mr. Miller did, we actually were in the red for roughly a 2-week period, and we had to inter-fund borrow in order to make sure we were not in the red, because we have money that's owed us by the state, and we don't have it in the bank, and we got to pay our bills. So I acknowledge that there are cash flow problems. So the question is, how do you deal with that? Because what it seems to me is we have cash flow problems, and we are using both the cash flow problems and budgetary numbers, which aren't real numbers because they're not actual numbers, to create a crisis to say we suddenly need to do all kinds of drastic things. We need to change the calendar. We need to get rid of winter session. We need to cut all these. I mean, you saw the drastic cuts that came in here last week and we talked about and the boards voted. So 3 things. What are the available funds to transfer? The general fund, which currently, and again, some of this is twisted around, but when I did this a couple days ago, it's within, there was $9 million in the bank and there was $6.5 million in encumbrances. I don't know what it is right now. I don't want to take too much time to recalculate it, but roughly $2.5 million was in the general fund that could be used. You could use 100% of that to pay out. In capital outlay, there was 18.3, and I don't think that's changed. And they have gotten permission from the board to do interfund transfers up to 75% of that amount. And then in the self-insurance fund, there's about 15.3. Again, they've got permission to get 75% transferred out of that if they need to. Again, I hope we don't have to do this. I'm just saying in an extreme situation, This is what we have available currently, right now as we sit, without another penny from the state. 27 million total, 27 and 3/4 actually. And then there is an anticipation of $9.5 million that's going to come, well, it sounds like Monday or Tuesday next week. So it's a total of $37.3 million, which sounds like a lot. I know it is a lot. But so that's the current total available cash flow. So if we're expending, if our budget next year is 105.6, which it was this year, I mean, that's sorry, that's not what our budget was. That's what we actually spent. So if we continue at that rate, it costs us about $8.8 million a month. So this $37.3 million, without another penny from the state, would cover us for about 4.25 months, which is roughly, they were saying January, February, whatever, is when they believed they would have a cash flow problem, okay? So that comports with what they're saying there. Then in addition to that, well, okay, then I said it did not include any surplus from 2011-12. Right now, the numbers this morning, it looks like approximately another million, which, you know, it's going to help you for, you know, what, a quarter of a month, not even a quarter of a month, a tenth of a month, whatever. And then there's the cost of Tran money. 10 million, if they actually do that, cost about 150,000, which is a lot of money, but if you need $10 million, it's pretty small in comparison to the whole budget and well worth it. And on top of that, if you get the 10 million, you put it in the bank and you actually get interest on it, and sometimes there have been cases where they actually made money because they get more interest from the bank where they put it, because you're getting it at a very good rate here because it's guaranteed money from the state. So they're pretty much guaranteed their money, so they're willing to do it at a very low interest rate. So you could actually possibly make money, but the cost is almost nothing. But even if it were $150,000, it's not a big cost. So that would carry us a month and a tenth. So you're looking at 5.5 months right now if we receive no more money from the state, okay? So as far as the cash flow goes, there's no emergency right now. I mean, nobody likes to be borrowing interfund. Nobody likes to do trans. But there's a clear, logical path to being able to cover any cash flow problems. But more importantly, going back to the budget, which is a very different issue, if we don't do anything different this year, and yet they're asking from the FA and from other unions and even just structurally in the college, they're saying we need to make these drastic changes. And when I say they, I'm not trying to, you know, it's the administration. They have a plan that they want to do. What I don't like is I feel that they're using the budget to get what they want to get, but that's not really, they want to do what they want to do, it seems to me. They have their priorities and what they want to do. But it has nothing to do with the budget, because we could do exactly what we did this year, next year, and be within budget. So that's, I want to keep it short. That was plenty long.
I have
Kevin.
Yes, I move that we, and I just want this for discussion, I move that we accept total employment costs. I just want to have discussion. Do I have a second?
Accept what? I'm sorry?
Danny's numbers for total employment costs of 86 million. Do I have a second? Danny, really no second? This is your numbers.
No, I mean, there's no need to make a motion about that. And I'm not saying that's the total employee cost. I'm not saying that. That was as of May 31st.
Yes, I know. I just want to say that
we can discuss it. We don't have to have a motion.
I want to have a motion on it because we have not been taking action and we spent the entire meeting on an update. So I would actually like. If you don't, it's fine. Let it die.
Does anybody want to have a second? Okay. Dies for lack of a second. Okay. And now, would you like to discuss it?
No, I don't want to. I would definitely like to move on to what we want to proactive things now, if possible.
Dave?
At least one.
Yeah, I kind of agree with Danny about the emergencies, that if there really is a true emergency, why are we hiring?
Yes.
I mean, really. And executive directors, even though I understand he said he wants them on the contract, but what we're doing is not hiring 2 vice presidents, but we're going to hire 4 executive directors, which are basically vice presidents.
Okay.
Not title-wise, but
No,
basically
I
the money
understand.
spent are going to be as a vice president. If you know.
Yeah, they're compensated lower than vice presidents, but I get your point. I do want to comment. Danny put a huge amount of work into that project, and I think we owe him at least acknowledgement of I mean, how many hours did you put into doing that,
I
Dan?
don't know, it doesn't matter.
A long time. So anyway, we appreciate that, and certainly these numbers are helpful, and they do inform our discussion and in our negotiations with the FA. We're looking at these numbers, we're looking at other numbers, and we'll just keep at it. So thank you for that. Now, Kevin.
We can just, I have to do my proxy. I was asked to make a motion on behalf of Andrew Bott, which was he wanted a move of $2 million from the Property Acquisition Capital Outlay Fund to help with the $10.5 million specifically for the layoff of the 50% hourly workers.
Okay, so you're moving to move $2 million from the Fund 41 capital outlay.
Yes, property acquisition specifically. Which is
The
$4
acquisition fund specifically, to the general fund, 01 general fund, for the purposes of helping to balance the budget for next year. So just in general, we all recognize that we're taking money that's put aside for a one-time purpose of capital outlay and/or in this case property acquisition and using it to balance the budget. All right. Do I have a second on that?
I'll second it.
Second by Piniella. Discussion.
It was brought to my attention by Andrew that he strongly wanted this because he felt first that we're being asked a lot and it would help for saving a lot of hourly workers as well as our peer-to-peer tutors and other student workers. Secondly, depending on the vote for Brown's initiative, if that passed, this one-time use could either be not used anymore, or if it fails, then we could take more appropriate action. But this was basically a time-saving measure.
Piniella?
Can you clarify? Could you write that? Could you clarify that as an amendment? So what I'm asking for is like a specific number and timeline.
Oh, you would like an amendment? Okay.
Right. Like, so are you going to say like I want to hear it as a clearer resolution? I think. Is
Okay.
what I'm
Let me
asking
think of
for.
the resolution. So.
I understand
Yes.
also if that needs to happen next week. If it's
No, I think I can do it off the top of my head. So, in the instance that the Brown Initiative fails, in the instance that the Brown Initiative fails, it is understood that this is one-time money, and how would I word that? That
Well,
it would not be
basic-
used again.
That's-
Yeah, that it would not be used again.
It's gone.
Yes, that it's accepted that the sacrifice will, I guess, have to be made. So, how would I amend that? I can't.
Well,
think of it off the top of my head.
I think what I hear you saying is that we would move the $2 million from capital outlay Fund 41 into the 12-13 operating budget and use that $2 million to help balance next year's budget.
Next year's budget.
If the Brown Initiative passed, I thought I heard, I think I thought that you were going that you would, that at that point we would be getting our $6.7 million back, and that perhaps what you were saying is that the Brown Initiative passed, that we would take $2 million of the 6.7 and return it to the capital outlay fund.
Yes,
Is that what you're
that's basically
saying?
what I was trying to hint at.
Okay.
Does that work for you, Piniella?
That's much more.
Yes.
I wanted it just kind of Steve.
Okay, Dave.
I'm not understanding the motion, really. What you're saying is, instead of borrowing the trans, you want to
No, I
No,
didn't
in
say anything,
addition.
just in addition.
addition to it?
Addition.
So this would
For what,
offset
for what
if
purpose? I'm sorry.
Yeah,
for what purpose?
what is it going to offset?
Hourlies. It'll help save
Hourlies. He said hourlies.
It's
He wants to offset, right.
for hourlies if they're laid off.
So this
$2
is-
million would be put specifically for the hourlies.
A little mistaken on the hourlies. There's a total of an annual budget for hourlies right now at about $7 million.
I would just like to make clear that last week when
This is
Roche
based
brought it
on
up,
Roche's
that
plan.
Roche's plan was to lay
Was
off
3
50%.
million. Dr.
Right,
Roche's plan is
3
$3 million, so,
I understand you.
yeah.
So-
And part of what I'm trying to get at is the 100% of all the hourlies can't be protected in the way you're trying to protect
We're
them
not trying to
because-
protect
We're not
100%.
protecting 100%.
Well, I'm just saying though, regardless of you transferring money in and out, all the hourlies are essentially at-will employees at the college. Difference being, all the issue, CSEA, FA, and Management Association are covered by a union. So before any issue person were to be laid off, for example, we would demand that the hourlies have to be eliminated prior to one of our people going. understand that.
Right, but in the $10.5 million cut plan that Rocha presented, the first one is 50% reduction of hourlies. So instead of reducing hourlies by $3 million, it would say reduce hourlies by $1 million after this motion. Is that more clear?
Yeah, and I think what Julio is, you're absolutely right, Hannah. That's exactly
You're
what
trying to
you're saying.
bargain, I think, something.
Right, and the contract, and I'd have to look at it, but I understand the concept. The contract basically says that before any full-time people are laid off, I don't know about furloughs, but at least I know about furloughs too. Before anybody is either furloughed or laid off, all of the temporary unclassified hourly employees would have to go first.
So then that,
One of the other things also brought to my attention, I mean, I'm here as a Senate, but I am the issue president. One of the other things that was brought to my attention throughout the campus is there's a widespread use of hourlies and contract people across the board. Excuse me. There seems to be a big abuse on how it's managed. Some departments with upwards of about 50 hourlies, other departments that really need them have maybe 10, you know. There doesn't seem to be some kind of regulation on how it's being done across campus, and brought to my attention, you know.
So just to be clear, BRAC could take this action if it chose to today. We would then relate the action to Dr. Rocha. But BRAC should not be under the impression that even if Dr. Rocha agreed to it or the Board of Trustees agreed to it, it's still a negotiable. It's still an item that would be subject to negotiations between the classified labor units and the district. And that would only occur if the unions agreed to it, I guess. I mean, I'm not well enough versed on all of the ins and outs of that, but that's conceptually what we're talking about, right, Danny? Yeah.
My understanding.
Yeah. But that doesn't mean we can't take action. It doesn't mean that we can't vote on the motion and let it and see how it goes. So how about if I restate the motion, try to, and then we can call the question if everybody agrees. So the motion on the table is that $2 million be moved from the capital outlay 41 property acquisition side of that account and be used to offset $2 million of the $3 million that exists in the 10.5 that impacts the reduction of non-classified hourly employees, with the caveat that should Governor Brown's tax initiative pass, the $6.7 million that we would receive as a result of our workload reduction being returned to us, that of that 6.7, $2 million would be taken from that 6.7 and returned to the capital outlay Fund 41 account. Right? Okay, so having heard, right, and exactly, and then the whole thing is pending negotiations with between the district and the union.
Got all that? Got all that.
Now, one of the reasons I talk so slow is because I'm really tired, so I gave myself a break while I was saying that. Anyway, so okay, that's the motion. All those in favor signify by raising your hand. 1, 2, 3. All those opposed signify by raising your hand. 1, 2, 3. An abstention. So I guess I get to break it, even on an abstention, right? I get to weigh in. So I think I am opposed as well. Okay, look at Kevin type.
No, I'm just like
I know.
making sure I have to
Okay.
Let me just say, the reason I abstain is because, I don't know, I'm
No,
hodgepodging this.
It's no big deal.
I'd rather some kind of comprehensive deal, so, at some point, if it was part of a more comprehensive solution to some of this, which, I don't know that there's a solution needed, because as I just said, if we do exactly what we did last year, we're living within our budget. So I don't know why we're looking for $10.5 million right now, to be honest. There is no budget crisis, in my opinion, based on the numbers that we have, even at 110 million in expenditures, so.
May I be candid? Possible?
Danny, they want a surplus.
Okay, we are now almost a half hour over our time. David, yes, sir.
Whatever happened to the executive credit cards and stuff that I asked for information on?
The executive credit cards?
Yeah, or the expense accounts?
Oh, okay. First of all, we don't have credit cards. That I can tell you. That I can tell you. I don't have that information at this point in time. Danny.
Real quick. Danny can't make the next two meetings. He asked me to fill in for him. Is that okay with everybody?
Well, yeah.
It's fine with me. Absolutely.
Okay, great.
Sure.
All right, so it looks like we're running long. I'd like to make a couple of
Absolutely.
motions, and let's go with the first one, which are, I move that we move items 5 and 6 to next week. So educational master plan, guiding principles,
Okay.
and budget development.
Okay.
Make a motion. Can somebody second?
Second.
Okay. The second motion that I would like to ask.
We have to.
Oh, we have to vote on it. So do y'all?
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Okay, great.
Opposed?
Thank you.
Okay.
The second thing that I would like to do is motion for 2 agenda items for the next week. There will be some related to this, but I'm hoping that it could be helpful. One is to discuss the survey that we had mentioned at the last meeting to look at institutional goals around budget issues. And what I would like us to talk about next week is we also, because now that we're kind of wrapping up this year, we need to start to look at next year and have a conversation about what happens if the Brown Initiative doesn't pass. What are we going to do to be a little bit more proactive in terms of financing and things like that? Specifically, what I would like us to look at and clarify so it's public for everyone is what I'm considering like the first in, first out policy, so it's not so vague and we're always making new decisions. What I mean is clarifying guidelines around what we think are essential and what can be cut first and what should be instituted back first. I think a lot of us wind up feeling like we're in crisis, like Danny is saying, because everything feels like it is a long term, like when we cut, we're cutting forever, and that's not what I think we're trying to argue for. And so what I would like us to do is to be able to follow through with that and have something that is clarified that we can use to facilitate this conversation across the campus so that people have some control over their long-term budget issues. So that's one of the things I would like for us to be able to take back and talk about based on the survey for the next round. The other thing I would like us to be able to talk about is future income.
I'm sorry, could you, for Mary, for the purposes of the agenda, can you just kind of have like a one-sentence statement?
Sorry, totally. So the next item would be the survey. The next item after that would be a criterion for cuts.
For reductions, a criterion for reductions. Okay, thank you.
And policy for what will be instituted back, assuming.
And how we build back.
Got it.
Okay. So criteria for reductions and followed by how we build back when times get better type thing.
That's that next motion.
Does it have to be a motion if we can just request?
No, those are just a request. So I'm
That's
putting
fine.
that
So
out there now.
we will actually have those as agendized. So we're going to have the educational master plan. I'll try to have Crystal come in here and do a quick update on that.
Great.
And then we'll have the budget development. I'll have Marie do a kind of a quick overview of where we are with the 12-13 budget development calendar.
Right.
And of course, the 10.5 is all part of that budget development. The whole budget update is kind of part of the budget development discussion as
That
well.
makes sense.
Okay.
So then I motion that we adjourn.
Okay. Do I have a second? Seconds. Okay. Thank you all very much. Have a great weekend, everybody.
Thanks.
Danny, have a great vacation.
Thanks.
Are you going anywhere? Are you going anywhere?
Yeah, we're gonna